In this video, I'm going to review some of the selection options available in Mentat, which is the user interface for Marc FEA solver. So when you create an FEA model, you often need to select various entities. It could be nodes or elements or edges or faces, so that you can apply various properties. It could be boundary conditions or maybe geometric properties or even material properties, and even sometimes to define the contact bodies. So there are several ways that you can achieve this, and so I'm going to take an example of defining a boundary condition to show how you can select some entities. So for example, here in this circular cross section, I want to apply the pressure on the outer edges. So all the edges on the outer side of the circular cross section. So first here I'm going to change the name of the boundary condition and specify that I'm going to apply a pressure and give a value of 1. So at this point we need to select all the edges that you want to apply this boundary condition to. So one basic option is to go ahead and select these edges one by one, all the outer edges that are on this geometry. But the only problem is, so right now there are 32 edges all around, so it's going to take a long time. And if you make a mistake, you have to come back and then reselect. And there is also another option. You could use box picking, or you can also use what we call the polygon picking as well to make this job a little bit easier. But there are even better ways to go ahead and select all the edges, all the outer edges on this set of elements. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. So first I can go to select option and bring up the selection control window. And so there are various options available on the screen. So you can see the single, path, and the user box and so on. So I'm going to focus on a few of these. So one thing is you can use the path option. Use the path. You can select a few nodes instead of selecting all the edges. What I can do is I'm going to select a few nodes on the boundary, and so once we select, and I'm going to end with the very first node we picked. So at this point it has selected 32 edges, everything on the outside. This is definitely a quicker way rather than box picking or even polygon picking. But there's still one drawback in that you have to pick all this a bunch of nodes on the boundary. And sometimes if you're not careful, especially depending on the curvature, you can pick some edges that you don't want. So I'm going to show that. So for, let's say I pick this node and go all the way over here, and pick fewer nodes. So when I do that, say it is not going along the outer edge, but rather it just found a path that's passing right through the cross section. And these are not the edges that we mean to select. So this is one thing you need to be careful about when you use the path method. But there is definitely a way to fix that problem. You can go to filter and turn on what we call the Alkaline Filter. So in that case, it's going to look for nodes or edges only on the outer side. So for example, so I click on the edges again and select the same set of nodes as I showed before, and you see that now it selected only the 32 edges on the outer. So that is one way of selecting these outer edges much more quicker. And let me turn the filter back to none, and I'm going to show a couple of other options that are available. One way is you can go to what is called edge flood. So if you use edge flood, what it's going to do is, so I click on edges and then I select one edge, and as soon as I select that edge, notice that it came up with 32 edges, and what's happening is it looks at the adjacent edges and looks at the angle between these two, and as long as the angle is with a limit angle of 60 degrees, so with that it's going to select all the edges that are next to it as long as the curve is smoother. If there is a sharp angle, for example over here, so in that scenario, definitely it's not going to select these edges over here. And there's one last approach that I want to point out. Let me go back to outline earlier that I mentioned, and over here I can go back to single, and just with single option in this particular cross section, let's say I click on edges, and once I click on edges, or you may have noticed that these icons are highlighted. So at the top we have all existing and all selected and all unselected, all visible and all invisible, and so on. In this situation I'm going to select all existing, and notice what happens. Once I selected all existing, it's going to check the outline of those elements, and so it selected the edges that are on the outer edge. So we get the same set of element edges selected here. So I can come here to edges add, and now I want to select these selected edges. So now we have applied pressure on these selected edges. So these are all the various methods that you can use to select in a faster and more efficient way, so that you can apply boundary conditions, and you can do the same thing when you want to define material properties as well, and contact bodies also. So we'll review some of the other options and also things that are available for 3D selection as well in another session. Thank you very much.